Welcome to another edition of the Star Local Media Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch. I'm the sports editor with Star Local Media, and I am being joined by Taylor Ragland, who does sports for Plano, Allen, and Lake Cities, as well as Justin Thomas, the sports editor for our Denton County papers. And gentlemen, let's talk the Varsitys. So, for those who who aren't aware of what the Varsitys are, basically, this is our 6th year of doing this. It's just a summer project that we've had going on for a bit. So, basically, during the summer of 2013, right around the same time as the ESPY Awards, the ESPN sports awards that have been going on for 25, 26 years, something like that. We decided to basically come up with our own knockoff of that, a high school sports themed version of the ESPYs, dubbed the Varsitys. So the way that it has worked since then is that we as a staff, we kind of go market by market by market and basically decide on the award winners for 9 different categories, split up into 3 parts, and it's just something that we always have done, for these last, I guess going on the 6th year now during the month of July. So we wanted to take that concept and bring a little bit of that discussion to the podcast. Basically, for this, starting this Monday, for these next 3 Mondays, we're going to take one award from each part of the Varsitys and then just kind of have an open deliberation on kind of how we arrived at our award winner for a specific market. So the awards for the first part, which for our Sunday papers, so your schools, Carrollton, Coppell, Lewisville, Flower Mound, and the Colony, plus Lake Cities, the first part for the Varsitys has already run for those respective papers. You can check out those, the actual awards themselves, the online version at starlocalmedia.com. But the first part of the Varsitys, we decided on the winners for Best Game, Breakthrough Athlete, and Biggest Moment, which is the biggest story that happened from the during the 2017-18 school year. So the award that we're going to use, that we're going to discuss today, is Breakthrough Athlete, and just talk about some of the athletes that kind of really burst onto the radar over the past school year for each of our markets. So Justin, you obviously had plenty of markets to work from here for this first part. Just kind of wherever you want to start, just kind of talk through the Breakthrough Athlete and just kind of how you arrived at the eventual award winner for one of your markets.
Yeah, plenty of markets and plenty of worthy nominees or candidates, I guess you could say, for this award. So we'll start with Lewisville and Carrollton. We'll kind of talk about the LASD programs in 6A here. So we'll start with Lewisville and Carrollton. Really wanted to pick Darius Snow. He had a breakout football season in safety, big time recruit, had a great season, but he was a sophomore. He was already his name's already known from what he did on basketball as a freshman. So I decided to bypass him, and I'm going to go with Keaton Morrison, cross country and track and field runner for the Lady Hawks. She had a awesome season. Just a freshman, came in, helped Heber into the state tournament in cross country. The Lady Hawks finished 2nd. She finished 14th overall at that meet. Her time was 18:04.95, so really good time there, 14th overall, just as a freshman at the 6A level. And then carried that into a strong season in the spring on track and field, and she actually qualified for state in the 800 and finished 5th, so kind of right on the fringe of the podium there. So really awesome freshman year for her. I know going into state, I did a little feature on Keaton and some of the other Hebron players that qualified for state in track and field, and their coach Chris Coppell was noting that her time in the 800 is one of the 10 best times a freshman in Texas has ever had. So
wow.
So she's already one of the best runners, just a freshman, so she's the breakthrough athlete to me. Sorry, Darius, but you did too much as a freshman to just include you for your football accomplishments this year, since you're already well known on the basketball court. So I'm going with Keaton Morrison for Hebron and Lewisville's breakthrough athlete. Okay.
That I was covering the regional track meet, and I got to see Keaton Morrison run that 800. I believe that because what did she place? Was it 2nd or 3rd? I should know this. I was out there.
She got 3rd, but out of that district, out of that region, and still got in, and then
Because I want to say she got 3rd at the meet, but of the qualifying times for state,
it was the 3rd fastest time, I think.
Yeah, the 3rd. All of the top 3 fastest times from regionals came from Region 1, so that just speaks to how talented a race that was. Taylor, I guess let's roll with Lake Cities. Where did you fall on Lake Cities for your breakthrough athlete?
Well, for Lake Cities, it was a pair of rising juniors, I guess. They were sophomores. And the name that kind of fell a little bit behind was Ben Price for the Falcon baseball team. Had a really good year, just a really solid infielder. Lake Dallas went back to the postseason. He was a big part of that. So just a solid year, but not quite as good a year, I thought, as my pick, which was Sydney Frazier, the goalkeeper for the Lake Dallas girls soccer team. So last year, it's a little bit of a, I don't want to call it a stretch that she broke through, but she did split time as a freshman and didn't see a whole lot of action. And coming into her sophomore year, talking to Coach Trina Hutzel, she was like, she sat Sydney down and said, you know what, this is, your position. You're going to be the starter. You're going to get the majority of the time in net, if not all the time in net. And she took it and ran with it. Lake Dallas didn't make the playoffs, but she was the reason that they stayed in a lot of games that were closer games. They had a lot of games go to penalties, and she was good in those games. So basically, just for her performance in being named the starter and not letting that intimidate or overwhelm her, and having a really solid season as just a sophomore as the starting goalkeeper, and now heading into next year should be a really integral part of what I think a Lake Dallas girls soccer team that may be ready to re-enter the playoffs and make a little noise in 8-5A. So for her, I guess just assuming the role of starter and running with it, Sydney Frazier.
For my pick for Lake City's breakthrough athlete, this was one of the, unlike Plano and Allen, this was a category that I looked at and immediately just something sprung to mind as far as a potential winner there. I went kind of in the same vein as you did. You picked Sydney Frazier, goalkeeper for the girls soccer team. I actually went with Caleb Irving, the goalkeeper for the boys soccer team. Caleb Irving, he was named the District 14-5A co-goalkeeper of the year, and it was kind of an interesting situation. He was only a sophomore, and he took over his first year in goal. But it was also interesting because the player who he replaced was Marcial Apayez, who was an all-district goalkeeper for Lake Dallas. The interesting part is Apayez is still on the roster. So they instead, they used Apayez at right back. I want to say it was right back, which creates kind of an interesting dynamic because you're kind of taking a bit of a risk there, putting just a sophomore in goal, when you already have an all-district performer at that position, and that is such a vital position just for any soccer team. So it spoke to the the level of confidence and the expectation that head coach Brandon Martin,
and he fulfilled it for sure. I'd say
had for Irving, and then as a result, we've talked about it on the podcast. Lake Dallas, their boys soccer team had their best year ever by any calculation, and Irving was a huge part of that. One of the numerous records that they broke this year within the program was most shutouts for a single season. I believe they had 9, and that's obviously a testament to not just the back line, but Irving as well, and the job they did in net. So just to come through as a sophomore, the job that he did, and to have that spot now locked down for these next 2 years should mean some pretty good things for Lake Dallas boys soccer going forward. JT, let's swing it back to you. Where do you want to?
All right, we'll stick in Lewisville ISD. We'll go with Flower Mound or Marcus. Another real tough decision. Really wanted to give it to Caleb Lohner for Flower Mound boys basketball. The Jags finished second. They were right in the hunt for the district title.
On the fast track to becoming one of the top prospects in the state.
Really good year as a freshman, all-district player, everything. So not a surprise to see him have a good year. But this year he kicked it up a notch, went all the way up to the district MVP award, averaged over 20
pretty big leap.
Scored, I think, when doing research, I think he scored 26 or more in 6 district games maybe. So just a real talent on the basketball court. Obviously, offensively has it all. Shoot, slash, rebound, score in the paint, score on the perimeter, but he really took big strides defensively as well, and I think that's what got him the MVP award instead of just maybe like Offensive Player of the Year or something like that. But he's not going to be my breakthrough athlete.
Must be a worthy winner.
Coming into the last school year, if you said, pick one thing that's going to guaranteed if you had to pick a state champion, I wouldn't have picked Hebron volleyball, even though I thought they had a good chance. I would have said for sure Flower Mound was going to produce the boys cross country champion. I would have been right, but it's not who I thought it would have been. Alex Meyer got all the headlines going into the year. He was on pace, had a great fall, was on pace to everybody's preseason pick to be the top runner, and he actually got sick during the state meet. And so when I'm looking at the results from the state championships back in November, and I see Flower Mound runner first, and I look at the name and it's not Alex Meyer, I was pretty shocked. It's actually Jarrett Kirk. So he had an awesome year in his own right, the whole year, but it definitely wouldn't have been the favorite going in, but he took advantage of his opportunity. His teammate was sick and couldn't finish the race, and he went all the way and won gold state championship. So great fall and a great season for him. I get his name backwards all the time. Jarrett Kirk. It's Jarrett Kirk. I'm going to try to get it right every time I mention it. But yeah, he won the state cross-country meet as a sophomore, so just still going to be an upperclassman now, but still just a junior coming in. And then, of course, in the spring, he qualified for state in the 3,200 in track and field and finished ninth. So probably not where he wanted to finish exactly there, but still got to state and track and field and won the state title for cross country. So Jarrett Kirk, junior for Flower Mound cross country and track and field.
I feel like for these bigger markets that we cover, for these individual awards, you just don't want to leave anybody out.
Right.
Some of them are so tough to
No, and you have 6-8 players that win district newcomer of the year. It's really hard to kind of whittle it down. But
even Lake Dallas, with Caleb Irving and Sidney Frazier, and I was torn between 3 or 4 potential people.
Yeah. And you also have to you don't want to lean too heavily to kind of the bigger sports like football.
Yeah, right. For sure.
So when you come through and you win state cross country kind of out of nowhere, I don't think anybody before the season would have maybe even known his name or picked him to win.
That's a breakthrough. That is basically the definition of a breakthrough performance, if there ever was one. Taylor, let's roll with let's see, for one of our markets that we comboed up. Let's go Allen.
Okay.
Where'd you fall on Allen for breakthrough athlete?
Well, Allen was one of the ones where, at least in my time covering Allen sports since I started in February, there really even wasn't a second candidate. For me, it was Brett Tanksley from Allen baseball, and that was pretty much it. That was kind of the end of my list because I didn't see Allen football. I didn't see the majority of girls and boys basketball, which both had good years. So just looking at kind of baseball, softball, the 2 soccer teams, and all that kind of thing, it was pretty clear that Brett Tanksley was going to be my pick. I think these stats that I have are just in district play. He went 41 innings, only allowed 30 hits, struck out 27, and had an ERA adjusted for 7 innings instead of 9, I think, of 1.02 in district play. And that was with a rest in the middle because, being a freshman and being a new arm and kind of working into the rotation, Allen was kind of conservative with him, especially in the middle of the season. But those numbers are just, off the charts. He was the unquestioned leader of that pitching staff. They won a district championship. So I think the definition of a breakthrough athlete, a guy that just walks on the campus, especially at a school that big and takes over as a freshman, is a pretty impressive feat. So for me, it was basically Brett Tanksley, and there wasn't anybody that had that kind of year as a newcomer or as somebody that was new on varsity. So
because that is, no small feat, being tasked with being a program like Allen, a program that went on to win a district championship and routinely has the level of expectation to be just a freshman and thrust into the responsibility of being their Tuesday night ace. First time under head coach Paul Coe in his tenure with the program that they've rolled with a freshman as their go-to pitcher. This was one of the categories where I was racking my brain for a while on this one, where you've had 4 or 5 worthy candidates, and actually wasn't until this morning getting in here that I actually I forgot about that guy, and and that was my ultimate pick. So some of the candidates that were a very worthy consideration for this, Callie Kamoa, the standout libero for Allen's volleyball team, slid right in as a freshman last year, and had a terrific year. I believe she was named 6XA's newcomer of the year. I want to say, if not that, then first team all district for sure. Tanksley was another consideration. And
I took that one from you.
The great year that he had on the baseball diamond. And then over at Lovejoy, Cecily Bramschreiber, following in just the latest great player to come through Lovejoy's volleyball program, slid right in as I believe she's a freshman as well, and just had a spectacular year for the Lady Leopards. And then in the more solo sports, Jordan Mitchell was one of the more impressive stories in the spring, as only a freshman qualifying for the state tennis tournament despite being seeded. I want to say she was seeded 3rd or 4th at district and regionals, and still managed to to get into the state quarterfinals. Ultimately, though, I went with a state champion as only a freshman. One of the most impressive parts about Allen's ongoing wrestling dynasty, which is now at 9 consecutive state championships, is just the ability to replenish the underclassmen ranks. Every year it just seems like they've got these standout freshmen and sophomores that just come right into the program and immediately just become state champions and state qualifiers despite their young age. And Allen had one of their numerous state champions this year on an individual scale was Braxton Brown, who won the state championship at 106 pounds for the Eagles, and obviously racked up plenty of points to contribute to that 9th consecutive state championship. Just a freshman that kind of slides right in and immediately just kind of takes that weight class by storm. I mean, he made fairly short work of that 106-pound bracket at the state tournament, pinned 2 of his 4 opponents in less than 2 minutes, and he finished the year ranked number 1 in his weight class according to WrestlingTexas.com. And I mean, you look at a lot of some of the best wrestlers to pass through that Allen program, names like Bo Nickel, Oliver Pierce, recently graduated wrestlers like Braden Redlin and Alex Lyles, and even last year with what AJ Ferrari was able to do. So, I mean, wrestlers that have gone on to do some great things, and you see obviously a great way to get that start of this to win a state championship as a freshman, and Braxton Brown was able to do just that. So that was my nod for breakthrough athlete. Taylor, before we head off to our break, what was your pick for Plano in this category?
For Plano, I considered a good player on a team that had a pretty down year in Jake Jennings for Plano East Baseball. Came in as a freshman and hit, I believe, 366 or something pretty ludicrous. So not a good year for the Panthers overall. Pretty down, but they had 3 or 4 guys in that lineup that hit and are coming back and are young, and Jennings kind of led the charge with that. So another several years to mature at the varsity level and contribute to the Panthers' effort and getting them back in the playoffs, hopefully for them. But my choice was Audrey McNeil for Plano senior softball. Yep. I think the job that she did, looking at the postseason run of the Lady Wildcats, when Bronte Roden went down with an injury that wasn't revealed until later on, obviously. But the story was we're resting her. We think McNeil can handle it, all that sort of stuff. But it comes out that Roden couldn't pitch to the level that she was accustomed to, and the Lady Wildcats needed somebody to step into the circle and carry them, the end result, all the way into the state semifinals. Yep. And McNeil was that arm. So in the playoffs alone, she went 34 innings, only gave up 16 runs, 38 hits, and I believe 10 of those hits were in their state semifinal loss to Tascasita. So 28 hits before that. So in the whole entire run up to the state semifinal, and then struck out 23 over the entire postseason. So just the job she did, essentially taking over that starting role, really not having that much prior experience as just a sophomore, now will be a junior. And kind of being in Roden's shadow, and then all of a sudden being called upon to, you have to carry us through the playoffs, and then they made it all the way to the state tournament in Austin. So Audrey McNeil got my pick just for being able to fill in the gap and doing probably better than even she or Coach Pipak or anybody in that program would have expected she would have done to help them go as far as they did and to have the postseason she did.
Because it was a bit of a baptism by fire when you look at some of the programs that she had to go up against.
Yep, you're gonna have to throw against Kellard, you're gonna have to throw against all the
Flower Mound.
Yeah, there you go.
That's Permian.
Good luck.
Yeah, that's
sorry.
So that's a look at least the few of our breakthrough athlete selections, and we will get to some more of those after a word from this sponsor. Today's Student Athlete Spotlight is brought to you by Bavarian Grill, authentic Bavarian food and beer garden. Listed by the Zagat survey as the highest rated German restaurant in Texas for 12 years in a row. 12 years! That's 3 presidential terms. You can enjoy traditional and authentic spring favorites now, everything from appetizers like slow roasted ham hock and potato pancakes to entrees like bratwurst or breaded schnitzel. Bring your whole family for lunch and dinner. They are open Tuesday through Saturday, located off Parker and Highway 75 in Plano. Bavarian Grill. And now, let's get back to the podcast. And let's pick this back up as we continue to discuss some of our breakthrough athlete selections for the 6th edition of the Varsitys. In the meantime, we have subbed out Taylor Ragland in place of Brian Murphy. Brian, who does sports for Frisco, Little Elm, and Celina, going to pass along some of his selections for breakthrough athlete. Brian, let's start with a market that I'm sure you probably lost plenty of sleep over. How do you pick a breakthrough athlete in Frisco ISD?
You don't. By the way, I'm super subbing in, it's like they call it in soccer in the World Cup. I got World Cup fever right now. I'm the super sub right now. But you're looking at Frisco. There's a sorry, the corny World Cup joke. I got the Brazil jersey on.
4 out of 40 for Brazil.
Yeah, I'm still mourning their exit out of the World Cup, by the way. But yeah, so in Frisco, you could literally just point your finger at a school and be like, breakthrough athlete, any sport, narrowing it down. One that really comes to mind was Marvin Mims, sophomore, newcomer of the year in District 13 5A. He had 12 touchdown catches, almost 1,200 receiving yards, almost 60 catches, over 20 yards per reception. As just a sophomore, the Division I college offers have been piling in for him. He literally came out of nowhere. I had no idea who he was, last year as a freshman. And then also in basketball, he emerges as one of the starting guards for the Lone Star basketball team. So Marvin Mims, he might be, a top 3 athlete, just, off the top of my head, just in general. Just pure athleticism in Frisco. And he really stormed out on the scene as a sophomore in a big way. And, I'm expecting big things as a junior.
Was there anyone else that was kind of on your
too? It's a really
Marvin
good name.
Mims?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of the rapper. This is why I'm hot. And Mims.
Oh, man. The one-hit wonder?
Yes, Mims, the one-hit wonder.
Were there any other candidates that were on your radar for this award?
For sure. You could even point to his teammate from last year, MJ Rivers, at quarterback. He was at Prestonwood the year before. Jason Shelley retires or graduates, I should say. He basically retired. He had pretty much a pro career at Lone Star. He's at Utah now. And then he comes in from Prestonwood, gets offensive MVP, is the engine of that offense for Lone Star, leads them, 4 rounds deep in the playoffs. So you could say he's a breakthrough athlete. Also, another kid in Frisco that I love bringing up is Mark Barbonis from the Wakeland boys soccer team. As a freshman, he was a team manager. He got a gold medal, or not a gold medal, but a first place medal, championship medal, whatever you want to call it, at the state tournament as a freshman, as a manager. He was at that game 2 years ago, or a little over a year ago, in blue jeans and a t-shirt. And then fast forward a year to this past spring, and he scores the opening goal of the championship game. He's the leading goal scorer in the playoffs for Wakeland. Gets state tournament MVP for Wakeland as just a sophomore. And if that's not a breakthrough athlete, then I don't know what else is.
That is a pretty. Mark does have a pretty compelling case because you don't see too many. So like from freshman to takes that leap as a sophomore, but this is literally team manager to state tournament MVP.
And then the same school, J.D. Gregson, another sophomore, who I had no idea who he was as a freshman. I don't even think he was at Wakeland his freshman year. Comes in, takes a starting job at the catcher position at Wakeland as a sophomore, gets district MVP. So 3 guys that weren't on my radar as freshmen that won big time superlatives or state accolades or what have you as just sophomores. So J.D. Gregson is definitely another guy that was a breakthrough candidate in Frisco.
Still got a couple markets left in your neck of the woods, JT. Let's. What was your breakthrough athlete pick and deliberation process for Coppell?
It was another tough one. Lots of worthy candidates over there at Coppell. You had the sisters that moved in, Rowan and Chloe Hassman, the young sisters. They contributed in cross country, taking the team to state, track and field, and they were both also on the varsity basketball team. Hudson Polk, sophomore MVP in the district in baseball. Quavian Adger really lived up to the hype and had a great debut season as a sophomore for Coppell's basketball team. But I am going to go football here, and I'm going to take freshman, now sophomore, KJ Liggins. Just had an awesome season. He did a little bit of everything for Coppell. I think he had about 200 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns. He had a rushing touchdown. He ran a kickback for a touchdown. And then, of course, he was the district's defensive newcomer of the year in the secondary, playing safety. This guy's big-time recruit. He's, they don't have the numerical order of the, I'm drawing a blank here, the recruiting ranks, for people that were just freshmen.
Yeah.
But he already has offers from A&M, Mississippi State, Arkansas, SMU. So
Some SEC love.
1 year of tape, and he's already getting a bunch of SEC offers, a bunch of offers in general. So just an awesome freshman year for him. And he also made the varsity basketball team and was a contributor to the team that made the playoffs on the basketball court too. So multi-sport star, but really a name that you're going to hear a lot about over these next few years at Coppell.
Brian, who was your breakthrough pick for Little Elm?
So last year, my pick was R.J. Hampton for obvious reasons as a freshman. You can't pick him now. He's on everyone's radar as a sophomore who's a...
And how much more did he really break through after last year?
Yeah, he's the 5A player of the year. I mean, so I'm going to stay away from R.J. Hampton this year. I'm going to look at Jorge Aldrete, another sophomore that came out on the scene. Wasn't on my radar last year as a freshman. He gets 14 5A newcomer of the year as a first baseman. He's on the ballot for our the Writers Association for the All-State team, coming up. So I might throw him a vote for All-State first baseman. And he also came in as a relief pitcher for the Lobos as well. Something that Coach Harbin and the Little Elm baseball coaching staff really needed from him. So he's multifaceted on the baseball field, and then I expect him to be probably their top player next to Logan Kohler next year as a junior.
Okay. Was there anybody else for Little Elm that was kind of in the mix for this, or was this one his to lose?
Well, you're going to put me on the spot. I had Jorge Aldrete on my piece of paper here, but you can. I don't know.
Was the one that required much thought? I mean, it sounds like Aldrete was, it was kind of his award to lose.
Yeah, it really was. Because the way I looked at it, there's a trend with my picks, I guess, here, guys that really came out of nowhere as sophomores. And I didn't really plan it that way, but that's just the way it seemed, went along, and especially in Frisco, guys that, were either on the JV or freshman team or weren't even in Frisco as freshmen or the year before and then coming in as sophomores. So that's why, one of the reasons why I picked Aldrete also.
Yeah, the whole underclassmen that really bursts onto the scene is definitely kind of the conventional wisdom, at least for how most of us at least arrived for our, our breakthrough athlete picks, which is weird because my pick for Plano kind of deviates from that line of logic, despite a number of candidates who fit that bill, the more traditional billing for breakthrough athlete. Taylor already mentioned Audrey McNeil, who just broke out as a sophomore for during the playoffs for Plano softball team. She was one of the candidates on my list, as was Jalen Anderson, who turned in a great year on the football field for Plano East, led the team in receiving touchdowns, was their second leading receiver as only a junior, and should very well be one of the 2-3 best receivers in this district coming into this season. And then you've got players like Advit Sharma with the Plano East tennis team, who made it to regionals and won the boys singles bracket in the spring for the district tournament as only a freshman. You had Trey Dickey, who just burst onto the scene as a freshman for the Plano East swim team, to the point where some of the other coaches in the district were calling Trey Dickey the future of the district because he was just that impressive, and he made the state meet and all that. And then you had with Plano West wrestling team, Ashley Leakus was one of the cooler stories. She just took up wrestling just this past year, first time ever, and she was able to make it all the way to state in her first year as a wrestler. Ultimately, though, I went a bit unconventional for this. I went with Zaria Collins for the Plano Senior Girls Basketball Team, and it's going to be an odd selection because Zaria played last year for Plano. Not only did she play, but she was one of their She was one of the first players off the bench, for head coach Rodney Belcher. She got plenty of minutes. She was, she contributed to a team that won the district title last year, went to the second round of the playoffs. But I thought that her role in her game, it kind of broke through from being an off the bench role player to being, you could argue that in some ways she was the most indispensable player for Plano's girls basketball team during their run to the Class 6A state championship. We've talked about it a bunch on the podcast that one of the big subplots to Plano's season was about midway through the season when Lolo Davenport was sidelined for 6 weeks, and that just immediately took out one of the go-to scorers for that team, one of their best players overall, and opened up a lot of minutes, a lot of responsibility for players to fill in. Obviously, a player like Jordan Merritt took on more of a scoring role, and that's no surprise. She's one of the top players in the country. Her thriving in a more expanded offensive role is no surprise whatsoever. But I was really impressed with just the job that Collins did, kind of seizing that extra extra opportunity. And she, the time that the added minutes that she got and the added responsibility, she was kind of unleashed as this two-way force. A lot of times she would be the player that Coach Belcher would put on the opposing team's best overall player. And a lot of times that meant going against like a Division I, sometimes nationally ranked caliber basketball player. And Collins held her own just fine, and she was still able to contribute on the offensive end as a post scorer. She was one of the team's best pound-for-pound rebounders, and it became, her role grew so much that by the time they got to the state tournament, this was with Davenport back by then, she played every single minute at the state tournament. She did not leave the floor once in the state semifinals or the state championship game. And that right there, I think, just, exemplifies just how much her role and how much she as a player developed, just in the, from her sophomore year when she was still a really solid player. But this year, her role just became, it just took such a leap that I thought just from a breakthrough standpoint, she became indispensable and one of the better two-way players in the Metroplex. So.
Sounds like it also shows how good of shape she's in.
I said playing, again, in the state semifinals against the teams they were going up against, that is no small feat to be able to play every single minute of a basketball game, especially ones with those stakes. So sorry Collins got my nod for breakthrough athlete, albeit in a bit of a more unconventional fashion than usual for this award. JT, how about the Colony? Where did you land on there?
The Colony, we're going to stick with another multi-sport athlete. We're going to go with junior Miles Price, obviously a sophomore last year, be a junior next year. Coming off a solid spring, he made it to regionals in track and field. He's a sprinter, and he was a part of the Colony's 400-meter relay team that finished second at district and made it out to regionals. But it's really about football for Miles. He's a versatile in that he's a multi-sport athlete, and he's versatile in what he does on the football field, and as a result he was named the district's, how 14-5A loves their superlatives. Miles was named the district's top two-way player, but he did everything for him: running back, defensive back, kick returner, just dynamic athlete. He's one the next year I need to do a better job of having my video recording device ready to go, because he can take it to the house in an instant. I got a lot of hits last year for one of his touchdown runs where he was just zigging and zagging everywhere. So he's really fun player to watch in the backfield there. Last year he had 77 carries, 635 yards, and 7 touchdowns. And then he also had 26 tackles and 3 interceptions in the secondary. And then in talking to Coach Rudy Rangel this offseason, he says, they're going to carve out an even bigger role for him next year. So breakthrough as a sophomore, and expect a huge season for him as a junior.
How much bigger does it get than that role already?
Yeah, I know.
Throw him at quarterback too?
Yeah, I'm sure he could do Wildcat. Maybe we don't want to spoil anything here. Maybe that's in the plans. But he does everything on the football field.
You know what district the Colony's in, right?
Yeah,
it's all my teams. Might tip them off.
Also a standout member for the track team. Got to see him running the leg on a couple of those relays that went to regionals, I believe.
400 team that finished second, I think. So but big season for him, and I think he's going to have an awesome year in the backfield there with Jaden Abdallah.
And let's round this out, Brian, with a look at your pick for Celina/Prosper. Where did you land on this one for breakthrough athletes?
So going into this past fall, the Prosper volleyball team, they were set. They just didn't have a setter. They had a setter.
It's pretty big. Yeah, but it's pretty big responsibility.
They graduated setter in Abby Gargis, and she was, a 4-year varsity player, and they were like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And a girl named Maddie Whitmire comes in and not only fills in her role, but becomes one of the top setters in the state and just fills right in that role. And you know what? Prosper, they went from, on that cusp of a state title to winning the state title in Class 5A, finally getting over that hump. And, they had, terrific outside hitters and Haley Killinger and Taryn Weber and other, girls that are going off to college now to play volleyball. But I think the glue of that team was Maddie Whitmire at the setter position, coming in as a junior, didn't get a whole lot of playing time as a sophomore, but really broke through, as one of the, the missing pieces and the final pieces for winning a state title in Prosper. And another girl who had a good junior year last year on the softball diamond was Rachel Eckroat, the pitcher, one of the top pitchers in the area this past year. And then she just takes the massive leap, to being, a good, good softball pitcher, an ace, of a good softball program to top 3 pitcher in the entire area, the entire DFW, regardless of classification. She was just, breaking records all season long, led Prosper to its first, undefeated district title. in Class 5A, and it's tough that they're going to have to try and replace her for next year going into 6A, but she really broke through as a senior this past year with the Lady Eagles.
So that is a look at a few of our selections for Breakthrough Athlete for the latest edition of the Varsitys. As I mentioned earlier, you can read these a lot of these awards pieces as a whole as they're posted online throughout the week at starlocalmedia.com. Also for the podcast link on our website, I'm going to put up a poll that has a lot of these selections from our markets, and you can get a chance to vote on who you think is the Breakthrough Athlete just for our area, our coverage area in general, not just market by market, but Star Local Media's overall Breakthrough Athlete. Otherwise, folks, that'll do it for this edition of the Star Local Media Sports Podcast. Brian, Justin, Taylor, appreciate y'all for tagging along. This has been Matt Welch with Star Local Media. Folks, we'll be back on Thursday with another edition of the podcast. In the meantime, y'all enjoy your week. We will talk to y'all later.